It's time to treat a very delicate subject in this retracing the causes of anger, in this case the Russian anger and the Ukrainian anger, retracing the sources in man's thirst for justice. We have to speak about quite a delicate subject, which is anti-Semitism. What is anti-Semitism in the Ukraine and in Russia? I would like to avoid this subject, but I can't, because the main reason given by Russia for invading Ukraine is the presence of a Nazi regime. It's the Denazification of the Ukraine that justifies for Russia its aggression. On the other hand, when we look at Russia itself and we dig a bit deeper into what has happened in Russia over the last 2 or 3 decades, you see that actually Russia has invented a new version of fascism, a kind of Slavo-fascism, heavily idealizing the tradition of the Orthodox Church. And the Orthodox Church, at least the dignitaries of the Orthodox Church, of course mainly the Patriarch of Moscow, have really lent themselves to this propaganda machine. So it's very strange when a fascist country, albeit in a new form, invades a country led by a Jewish president in order to denazify it. So it is important to have a closer look at all this. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, who I think partly because of propaganda was widely considered to be a very great and skillful, competent diplomat, has made a very silly remark when asked about the Jewish president of a Nazi state. He answered, well, Jews are the worst persecutors of Jews, as history has shown. Very strange remark indeed. But we have to study more closely what is the role of anti-Semitism and the presence of anti-Semitism in Ukraine and also in Russia. Now, one very authoritative person who has studied this extensively is the Russian writer Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. He has written a book, it's called 200 Years Together, 2 centuries together. It's about the life of the Jews and Russians together in Russia. The first part of this pretty impressive study deals with Russia until the revolution, and the second part deals with Russian during and after the revolution. And in fact, what Solzhenitsyn shows is that it's true, and this is not only shown by Solzhenitsyn, it has been remarked by others, that Jews played a very important role in the Bolshevik faction of the Communist Party, which led the revolution. Jews played a very important role in the revolution, but that doesn't mean that the Jews played an important in the revolution. In other words, a disproportionate part of communists during the revolution and just after were Jews. But they represented only a very small minority within the Jewish population. Many communists were Jews, not very many Jews were communists. After the Bolshevik Revolution, we of course have the time of the purges by Stalin, who has used, of course, anti-Jewish sentiment to form his kind of, let's say, international socialist state, the Soviet Union. And because of that, a lot of the symbolism used against the communist regimes and the Communist Party has very strong anti-Semitic connotations. The Bolshevik Revolution, in many also tattoos of prisoners, is depicted as a Jewish revolution, with not just obscene tattoos, but also very violently anti-Jewish tattoos. And that is a thing that we can recognize quite easily in these tattoos. So again, it is very iconic, it's very symbolic, but there is very little or no rational content of this. It is an irrational reaction. It is the icon, but not the logos. There is no reasoning. It's purely emotional. It's purely a blind anger against a power that cannot be resisted because it's too strong. And in a way, it's also full of self-hate because there's no instrument to resist communism. It's an overwhelming power where only the individual can resist, and aggression and the show of power, lie and intrigue seem to be the only ways to resist communism. As I said, when the state has stolen everything, then there is no more responsibility, there's no more morals possible, there's no more law except the law you make yourself in your own environment. So, of course, in the Ukraine also this anti-Semitic symbolism has taken shape. One could say the Ukraine is less marked by the irrational orthodoxy of Moscow and has been more influenced by the West. So it's not surprising that the anti-Semitic sentiments in the war took a rational form closer to the Germans. And I'm not saying at all that irrational anti-Semitism is worse than rational anti-Semitism. Maybe even the contrary. The anti-Semitism of the Germans is maybe colder than the anti-Semitism in Russia and also in Ukraine, but it's definitely more determined. It uses reason to attain its goal, and if you hate the Jews, it is a logic consequence that you have to kill them. Which is not it wasn't that much the case in the Soviet Union. So, in order to really try to distinguish well, we have to see what are the reasons for the anti-Semitism, which are not explainable in ideology or racism or Aryanism or the Nazi ideology, but which sprung up from a spontaneous, maybe blind reaction of the people. It was reinforced by Stalinist propaganda, although it was never used in a very explicit form like in Germany, like in Nazi Germany. But you will find these sentiments still there. And it's shocking and it's appalling to see the swastika being used by some minute militant forces in the Ukraine, but it's not surprising. and it's maybe not as evil as it seems. Don't forget, I said that already before, that Ukrainians joined the SS after the German invasion because they thought they would liberate them from the Russians, but they were transported to Germany, where they actually revolted. They shot, they killed their German officers and joined the French resistance. When the world is on fire, it seems that it can only be solved by violence, then of course you can expect anything, and it's unimaginable for the world we live in today, and I hope it will remain unimaginable. So I think that explains a little bit why you get this anti-Semitic symbolism sometimes emerging. It's interesting to reflect also on some observations of Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn. He said, yes, Jews played a crucial role in the revolution. They were secularized Jews. They had lost their Jewish faith and even more their Jewish hope. It was secular Jews who played a crucial role in the revolution. But Solzhenitsyn says, confirms, emphasizes that after all it was Russians who killed Russians. And he adds to that in the concentration camps in Siberia, in the Gulag, and he has ample experience of that, the Jews that were there, they had some sort of solidarity. They tried to survive together. Whereas the Russians that were imprisoned in the Gulag, there was no solidarity. Solzhenitsyn complained that while Russians were in the Gulag, they continued to create a hell for each other. And with that, I think Solzhenitsyn is one of the very few Russian thinkers who is really thinking in a very conscientious way. He is not somebody with a victim complex. He doesn't consider himself as a victim. And that's what makes him great. Like the Jews of the Old Testament, like Aleksandr Solzhenitsyn, but you see the same thing with the Polish and the Irish, who suffered greatly during their history, not for being Jewish, but for being Catholic. They do not have a complex of being a victim. They are so used to suffering, they bite through, they go on and give you hell if you want to touch them, if you try to kill them once more. This lack of victim complex, I think it's a great sign of dignity. And we see that with Solzhenitsyn, many Ukrainians, Polish, Irish, actually with everybody who has suffered a lot and knows how to appreciate their life, their land, their culture, their gender. To resume, I think we can say about this very delicate subject that the anti-Semitism in the East is irrational, not logical, not intellectual, and mainly iconic. And the main interpretation is anti-communist, much more than anti-Semitic.